"Dad, it's a one-way trip," Ethan said, slipping the gold-edged ticket into my hand as the crew lowered the last rope from the dock. He smiled like a man who believed he'd already won, slow, deliberate, triumphant, the kind of smile you give someone when you know something they don't. Lila hovered behind him, holding 3 crystal glasses of red wine, the liquid catching the late afternoon light like blood. To new beginnings, she chimed, her voice sweet and sharp. I stepped onto the yacht, pretending to lean heavily on the railing, pretending my back hurt, pretending my memory had been unreliable lately. I saw the way she watched me like a hawk tracking wounded prey. Then she lifted her phone and whispered into it. Phase 1 starts now. That was when I knew this wasn't a celebration. It was a trap. But what they didn't know, what they could never imagine, was that I'd built traps long before either of them learned how to walk in expensive shoes. And this time, I wasn't the one walking into one. They were. As the solstice pulled away from the Newport harbor, I kept my breathing slow and steady. The wind cut across the deck with the crisp bite of early autumn fluttering the edges of my jacket. Ethan stepped beside me, arms folded like he owned the ocean and me with it. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" he asked lightly, as if he hadn't spent the past year treating me like some forgetful relic clinging to relevance. "It is," I answered, giving him the smile of an aging man, too tired to fight. That was part of the role now, an old father losing his luster, losing his memory, losing his grip, a perfect target for anyone hungry enough to take what hadn't yet been offered. Lila approached, her heels clicking against the teak ridiculous shoes for a yacht unless you wanted to pretend you belonged on one. She held out a glass to me. "For you, Mr. Ward. A toast to your recovery." I shook my head slightly. "My stomach's been off. Maybe later." Her eyes flickered with something sharp and irritated before she hid it behind a smile. "Of course. Whenever you're ready." She turned away, and I saw her angle her phone again, concealing it beneath the sweep of her hair, pretending to take a selfie, but the lens pointed toward me. She'd done this before. Last month, last dinner, last board meeting. Each time she captured a moment where I blinked too long, hesitated too long, paused before answering. Little fragments she could stitch together to form a narrative of cognitive decline. Fake dementia, elder incompetency, inheritance manipulation. I recognized the pattern now. But I didn't show it. Act weak, act slow, act confused. Let them build the image they desperately needed. The solstice surged forward. Strong engines, new paint, polished chrome. A boat bought with money they claimed was for expanding Ethan's leadership portfolio. $3 million I thought was helping my son. The same son, now orchestrating a final sale that conveniently left no return route, no backup crew, no witnesses, except the woman who'd like nothing more than to sign my death certificate herself. The harbor lights faded behind us, swallowed by the darkening waves. Ethan leaned against the rail. "Dad, I'm glad you agreed to come. Really. It's been too long since we had time together." That was the first red flag. Ethan hated time together unless it involved signatures. I gave a small nod. Always happy to spend time with my son. He seemed satisfied with that, which told me all I needed to know. A guilty man is predictable. A guilty man needs reassurance he's winning. As we headed deeper into open water, I let my gaze drift toward the horizon. A storm was building far to the southeast, only a smear of gray now. But I knew storms the way some men knew business deals. This one would be here within hours. Big seas, rough wind, perfect cover for an accident. I braced when the boat shifted. My hips still ached, sometimes not from age, but from a fall on the docks years ago. A real injury, unlike the imaginary ones Ethan and Lila had been telling people about. Dad forgets things they'd whisper, "Poor guy getting older." "You need anything?" Ethan asked, suddenly tilting his head like a man genuinely concerned. "Just fresh air," I said, tapping the rail. He studied me a moment, then forced another smile. Of course. He walked away, and I followed him with my eyes. Everything was too deliberate, the selective kindness, the curated conversation, the way he kept steering me toward isolated corners of the deck. That's when I noticed something else, no visible crew. Usually the Solstice ran with at least 3 on deck. Today they were gone, hidden, sent below, or told to stay out of sight. A perfect stage for an accidental fall. I pressed my hand against the inside pocket of my jacket, feeling the smooth metal of the recording pen. I turned it on before stepping onto the yacht. A gamble, but a necessary one. The sky dimmed as clouds rolled over us. The water grew darker too, shifting from navy to ink. Ethan reappeared beside me with 2 glasses of wine, one deeper red than the other, almost too dark. "Come on," he said. "Just one sip. It's your favorite. 2012 Malbec." I stared at the glass closest to me. The color was off, and the scent beneath the fruit I caught bitterness, a chemical whisper. "I'll save it for dinner," I murmured. He frowned. "Dad, don't make this difficult." Lila drifted back into view at that exact moment like a vulture circling. "Oh, please," she said sweetly. "Just humor him. It's a special trip. A special trip. A one-way ticket. A celebration of recovery. Too many contradictions." I took the glass slowly, lifted it, tilted it, let the reflection of the sunset mask my refusal. Then, when they both looked away for half a second, I let a single drop touch my lip, but none reach my tongue. My hand lowered the glass without spilling a thing. They didn't notice. They were already slipping into phase 2. Ethan shifted into his rehearsed lines. "Dad, have you thought more about the trust, about simplifying things? You've been so forgetful. Forgetful." I made my eyes soften. "I'm doing my best, son." He smiled sympathetically, a predator comforting prey. "I know, we're here to help." "We," that word used to mean family. Not anymore. Lila interjected. "Actually, Ethan, why don't you show him the binder, the one with the updated documents?" There it was, the hook in the water. Ethan pulled a leather folio from under a seat cushion. Inside I saw tabs, Trust Revision, POA, Will Update, Succession Plan. My death mapped out like a business strategy. I touched the cover lightly, maybe later. "The motion of the boat is making me a little woozy." Lila exchanged a tiny look with Ethan's satisfaction. "See," she whispered. "He's slipping again." The yacht dipped as a stronger wave hit. The storm was approaching faster now. Wind slapped at the flags overhead. An omen, or a blessing, depending on which side you stood. I excused myself, pretending I needed the restroom. Ethan offered an arm as if helping a frail old man. I took it because letting him believe I needed it was a weapon. When I stepped into the private cabin, I closed the door, let my breath out slow, and opened the small metal safe installed in the wall. Not because I needed anything from it, but because I suspected someone else had used it recently. I was right. There beneath a folded blanket lay a folder stamped Ward Transition Plan Phase 2 Incapacity Event. I stared at it for 5 long seconds. Then I smiled. They thought this would be my final voyage. But if my son had given me a one-way ticket, he'd forgotten one crucial thing: I was the man who taught him how to navigate. And tonight, he'd realize he wasn't the only one capable of steering a storm. The storm line on the horizon thickened by the minute, turning the sky into a wall of bruised gray. By the time I stepped back onto the deck, the first low rumble of thunder pulsed across the water. Ethan and Lila stood near the bow. Their voices hushed and urgent, the folio of forged documents tucked underneath Ethan's arm, as if it were a sacred text they planned to deliver to a judge before sunrise. I pretended not to notice them watching me. I leaned against the railing, tapping a slow rhythm on the wood, like a man trying to calm nerves he didn't have. The ocean heaved beneath us. The solstice cut through it cleanly, but the shift in its balance told me we weren't in friendly waters anymore. That part was real. Everything else, the aging, the frailty, the foggy memory. They'd be disappointed to learn how fabricated it was. Harper had once taught me how to smell a storm before it made land. "Watch the seabirds," she'd said. "When they drop low and hug the water, get ready." On the solstice, there were no seabirds, no warnings, just the feeling in my bones that something ancient and dangerous was moving closer. Ethan approached slowly, wearing an expression he thought resembled concern. He'd practiced it in the mirror, no doubt. "Dad, you look pale," he said. "Let's go inside. You need to rest." I studied his face, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes darted toward the stern where the camera on the mast was positioned. He needed that footage, me unsteady, confused, vulnerable. Evidence for the dementia narrative. "I'm fine," I said weakly, hand grazing the rail as if I relied on it. "You're not fine." His voice sharpened. "You said you felt dizzy earlier. You should sit." There it was, the slip. The impatience. A corner of his true self peering through the mask. Lila walked to my other side, smiling as if she were comforting a dying relative. "Let's go downstairs," she said gently. "The wind is too strong up here." Her hand hovered behind me, ready to steady me for the camera or push me if the angle demanded it. A swell hit the solstice hard, tilting the deck under our feet. Lila grabbed the railing to keep balance. Ethan reached for my elbow. I let my body sway, let my knees dip, let the frailty play out like a scene in a movie they directed. Ethan caught my arm. "See?" he said loudly. "He's not well." "For the video," Lila added too quickly. They both tensed when they realized what she'd said, but I let it pass unchallenged. Let them think I was too foggy to catch slip-ups. "I just need a moment," I murmured. I allowed Ethan to lead me toward the interior lounge. He wanted that moment recorded too, me being guided like a helpless elder. Their narrative was building itself. Inside the lounge was immaculate, too immaculate. No open charts, no tools, no safety equipment lying around like a real working vessel. They'd scrubbed this place into a stage. The leather couches gleamed, and the bar had been stocked with all my favorites, from whiskey to the old brand of vermouth my late wife used to mix into my nightcaps. A trap disguised as nostalgia. I made a show of lowering myself into the swivel chair near the navigation console. Ethan pretended to adjust the controls, though the autopilot was clearly maintaining course. "We're about 7 miles offshore," he said, tapping the digital map. "Still time to head back if you're not feeling well." "Oh?" I asked softly. "Is that what you want, Ethan, to head back?" His eyes flickered at the tone. "You know I only want what's best for you," he said. "And what's best for me," I replied slowly, "is decided by you." The question seemed to catch him off guard. He opened his mouth, closed it again, and settled into a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Dad, we just want to help you manage things better. You've been overwhelmed, forgetful. There have been incidents." "Incidents," I echoed. He lifted the folio. "I have everything here. You've been misplacing keys, repeating conversations, missing important signatures. The board is worried." "The board or you?" Lila re-entered the room with a tray, 2 glasses of wine, 1 water. Her expression was too careful. She set them before us. "For you," she said, handing me the water. I stared at it for a beat too long, and she rushed to cover the move. "Hydration is important, especially after your surgery." I took the glass. Didn't drink. Another swell rocked the yacht. The clouds thickened as the storm pulled closer. I saw Ethan glance toward the stairs leading up to the open deck, the place where they would want the final scene to happen. Fake dementia. Fake incompetency. Accidental fall at sea. Probate fraud. Inheritance theft. A well-oiled machine. We were thinking, Lila began softly, that if you just sign some of these adjustments now, you can rest for the rest of the trip. No more stress. Adjustments, I repeated. Ethan opened the folio to the page marked with a red tab. This is a simple power of attorney update, so we can manage your financial matters while you focus on your health. The fake compassion in his voice nearly choked me. And if I don't sign it, I asked. Silence. Lila took a breath. Your doctor believes your judgment has been compromised lately. If you refuse to accept help, we might have to take legal steps. For your safety, I laughed quietly, something old and sharp sliding back into place inside my chest. The sound made both of them freeze. Dad. Ethan warned, this isn't funny. No, I said it's not funny at all. Another bang of thunder rolled across the sky. I stood not slowly this time, but with the steadiness they didn't expect. Ethan stiffened. Lila took a step back. What are you doing? She asked. I'm going to get some air, I said. You should sit, Ethan insisted. It's dangerous out there. For who? I asked calmly. They exchanged a nervous glance. I moved toward the stairs, letting the silence chew at them. When I stepped back onto the deck, the wind hit me full force. The sea had turned wild white caps cresting under the steel hull. Rain misted the air. The storm wasn't here yet, but it was coming with purpose. I gripped the railing, staring out at the horizon. Behind me, footsteps, Ethan and Lila following. Perfect. The deck pitched sharply with another swell, and they both reached for something to steady themselves. I didn't. Ethan yelled over the rising wind. Dad, please come inside. You're going to fall, am I? I asked. Rain dotted the surface of the sea in sporadic bursts. The wind howled against the mast. The yacht tilted again, harder this time. For the first time that day, I saw something true in Ethan's eyes. Fear. Not fear for me, fear of me. You don't look confused, he shouted. Why aren't you confused? I've never been confused, son. Lightning cracked somewhere in the distance. Lila grabbed his arm. Ethan, we should do it now. If we wait any longer, the storm. She stopped when she realized I was listening. It's okay, I said. Go on, finish the sentence. Neither spoke. The storm wind tore through us, slamming into the railings, whipping their clothes. The sky was an iron lid dropping over the ocean fast. I took a slow breath. You brought me here for a reason, I said. So let's finally talk about it. Ethan stepped back. Lila's eyes darted to the camera mast. I looked up at the lens. Recording, is it? I asked. Neither answered. Good, I said. Because for the first time in months, I'm not the one pretending. The sea roared like a living creature. The solstice dipped once more. The moment I'd been waiting for had arrived. Bạn đã nói Việt chương 3 bằng tiếng Anh khoảng 800 từ theo dạng ý đã có. Không phân tích, không giới thiệu, bắt đầu ngay bằng câu đầu tiên. Chỉ xuống dòng giữa các đoạn, không dùng gạch kể hết dòng ChatGPT đã nói. Thunder cracked so close it rattled the rail beneath my hands. But Ethan and Lila were too focused on me to notice the storm tightening around us. Lightning flickered behind the clouds, revealing the truth in brief, jagged flashes, their wide eyes, their clenched jaws, their fear that the man they'd planned to kill wasn't playing his role anymore. You're scaring us, Ethan shouted over the wind. No, I replied calmly. I'm reminding you who taught you to stand on a deck during a storm without falling. Lila's grip on Ethan's sleeve tightened. We shouldn't be out here, Ethan. This isn't the right time. That's the problem, I said. You think the right time to kill a man is a matter of scheduling. Lightning split the sky again. This time the thunder rolled so deep it felt like the ocean's heartbeat. The solstice lurched, pitching us toward the bow. Ethan grabbed the railing with one hand and held the folio under his arm with the other. That folio, my death sentence disguised as legal paperwork, fluttered violently in the wind. "Dad, come inside," he yelled. "You're going to slip," behind him. I saw the camera mounted high on the mast, recording everything. A storm, an elderly father, a son pleading. The perfect narrative for an accidental fall. Too perfect. Another swell struck, this time larger, lifting the solstice up and dropping her with a heavy slap. Salt water sprayed over the deck, soaking our clothes. I wiped the water from my face. "Tell me something, Ethan. If you truly believed I was incompetent, why are you trembling?" Lila stepped forward. "This is crazy." "None of this is," I cut her off. "You pushed the doctor into signing papers he never read. You filmed me every chance you got. You staged confusion I didn't have. And now you've brought me 7 miles offshore with no crew visible and a storm approaching." She stared at me, speechless. "You think I haven't seen this before?" I continued. "I built a business in a world full of men who smile as they stab you. I recognized the look the moment you handed me that one-way ticket." The solstice groaned as a gust of wind slammed against the sails. The deck tilted far enough that Lila let out a sharp cry and clutched Ethan's arm. He held on to her, but his eyes never left me. Ethan cleared his throat, trying to steady his voice. "Dad, you're confused. You need help. That's all we're trying to do." A wave crashed across the deck, forcing us to brace ourselves. I didn't miss the glance Ethan threw toward the stern ladder, the one that led down to the swim platform. A perfect fall zone. A perfect angle for the camera. So that was plan B. "Help?" I said, raising my voice over the storm. "Tell me, son, does help usually involve forged medical reports? Or did the part where you rehearsed me forgetting my own birthday slip your mind?" His face tightened. Another flash of lightning illuminated us, all 3 figures on a rocking deck, surrounded by ink-black water. For a heartbeat, we looked like shadows cast on the bow of a sinking ship. Dad, Ethan began stepping closer. "You've been under stress. Losing Mom affected your memory. You don't see how much you've been struggling. Is that why you deleted my signature authorization from the company database?" I asked. His mouth opened, closed. "And the part where you filed an early draft of a will change I never signed. Was that concern too?" Lila stepped in, voice shaking with anger. "We did what we had to do. You were becoming a liability." There it was, the truth. Not wrapped in sympathy, not coated in false concern, raw, sharp, and honest. You weren't supposed to hear that, Ethan hissed at her. I nodded slowly. "I know. That's why I wanted to talk out here." Their faces twisted in realization. Jonathan Ward wasn't confused. He wasn't weak. And he wasn't alone. I slipped my hand deeper into my jacket and pressed the small button on the recording pen, the same pen that had been capturing every word since we left the harbor. "You know, I said this will sound even better with the storm in the background. Courts love atmosphere." Ethan's composure shattered. He lunged for me, hands outstretched either to grab the pen or to shove me. But he'd forgotten something crucial. I spent 40 years navigating storms. He spent 20 navigating excuses. I shifted my weight and stepped aside just as another swell lifted the yacht. Ethan stumbled forward, slammed into the railing, and nearly toppled over. Lila screamed, grabbing him. I remained still. "You almost fell," I said. "Careful. Accidents happen at sea." Ethan's face twisted, and for the first time he stopped playing the grieving son. He straightened, water dripping from his hair, eyes blazing with something violent and unfiltered. "This was supposed to be easy," he spat. "Dad, you were supposed to sign the damn papers." "And then what?" I asked. "A tragic slip. The storm takes me. Poor Ethan inherits everything I built." Another rumble of thunder rolled directly above us. Lila snapped. "You weren't even doing your job anymore. The board hated you. You were old, slow, confused." "I wasn't confused," I said quietly. "I was grieving." The wind screamed across the bow as if echoing the truth. "And in your grief," Ethan said bitterly, "you let the company rot." "No," I answered. "I let my son become someone I don't recognize." For once, neither had anything to say. Lightning tore open the sky. The rain intensified, turning the deck slick. Water sloshed across our feet, dragging loose items back and forth with each wave. I lifted the recorder slightly. "This is over," I told them. "Both of you are going to answer for what you've done." Lila's face contorted. "You won't make it back to shore." That was the closest she'd come to a confession. I stepped back, letting the wind whip my coat around me like a banner. "There's one thing you didn't consider," I said. "One variable you forgot." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "What?" "You assumed this storm came at the wrong time," I said. "But for me it came at the perfect time." The solstice slammed hard into a wall of water. Lila screamed again. Ethan grabbed the railing. Thunder detonated directly overhead. And in the chaos of wind and salt and darkening skies, I leaned close enough for Ethan to hear me clearly. "I'm not the one who's going overboard tonight." His eyes widened. Because he understood. The game had changed. And he no longer controlled the board. The solstice pitched violently, and the storm finally broke open, unleashing the full weight of its fury. The sky roared, the ocean rose, and the yacht became a battleground of slick wood and swirling wind. Exactly the kind of place where truth refuses to stay buried. I tightened my grip on the railing and prepared for whatever came next. The night wasn't done with us yet. The moment the solstice slammed into the next wave, the deck tilted so sharply it felt like the entire ocean intended to roll us over. Ethan stumbled, grabbing the railing with both hands. Lila clung to him, shrieking as seawater crashed over the bow and drenched us entirely. The storm had swallowed the yacht, and we were reduced to 3 silhouettes clinging to a strip of wood in the middle of a raging Atlantic night. "Dad." "Get inside," Ethan shouted, though it wasn't concern that sharpened his voice. It was fear that the situation had slipped from his control. Rain pelted sideways needles against my skin. The wind howled through the railings like an animal. But I didn't move toward shelter. Instead, I walked closer to Ethan and Lila, planting my feet firmly as the solstice pitched again. "You chose the wrong night to kill me," I said. A bolt of lightning lit their faces, twisted, soaked, terrified. "And not only because of me." Ethan wiped water from his eyes. "We need to get below deck now." "Why?" I asked. "Storm wasn't in your plan." Lila's voice trembled. "This is insane. We can't do this now." "Ethan, we—" Another wave slammed us, and the deck shuddered violently. She screamed as her heels skidded. I reached out and grabbed the back of her jacket, preventing her from sliding across the slick wood and over the side. She froze, staring at me, breathing hard. "You saved me," she whispered. "Don't thank me," I said. "I didn't do it for you." I released her, and she scrambled backward, keeping her distance. The solstice dipped again, its bow cutting deep into a trough before rising sharply. Thunder cracked above us with a boom that shook the mast. The yacht had gone from luxury vessel to runaway coffin in under 10 minutes. And Ethan still hadn't abandoned the plan. He squared his shoulders, jaw tight. Dad, he said, raising his voice above the roar, signed the documents. Now, we can't survive this storm without control of the company. I need legal authority to deal with the aftermath. Aftermath. The word landed harder than the rain. You planned this, I said. You knew the storm was coming. His jaw clenched a second time, confirmation enough. It wasn't supposed to hit this early. Ethan snapped. We didn't predict the shift in pressure. Lila rounded on him. You said we had a clear window. You said the fall would look natural. We still have time, Ethan shouted back. If he signs, I stepped closer. They both went silent. You think a signature will save you from a felony murder charge? I asked. Another flash of lightning painted the deck white. For a heartbeat, the scene froze. Lila, clutching the rail. Ethan holding the folio, me, standing between them like a ghost risen from a past they'd underestimated. I reached out, plucked the folio from Ethan's water-slick fingers, and let the wind rip it open. Pages peeled out like frightened birds, scattering across the deck and into the raging sea. Lila cried out and lunged for them, slipping, landing hard on her knees. Ethan let out a roar. What have you done? Those were legal documents. That was your lifeline, I said. And now the ocean has it. No! He lunged toward me, fury blazing through his soaked hair and dripping clothes. But he wasn't the one who'd spent decades keeping balance on a deck in weather worse than this. I stepped aside. He slid past me, slamming into the opposite railing with a grunt. Lila scrambled over. Ethan, stop. This is going wrong. Everything is going wrong. I didn't grant them another second. We're going to lose the boat if one of you doesn't take the helm, I said. Thunder erupted again. The yacht lurched violently, the wheels spinning freely as the autopilot struggled against the shifting current. Ethan hesitated. He wasn't expecting me to think about survival. He wasn't expecting to share a goal even temporarily. His mind was a battlefield of fear and confusion, half wanting to keep me alive long enough to secure signatures, half wanting to finish what he started. I'll take the helm, I said, turning toward the wheel. No, Ethan snapped instinctively. I'm the one in command. You lost command the second you tried to kill me, I replied. He froze. A wave broke over us, drenching everything again. In the chaos, I stepped past him and gripped the wheel, bracing myself as water streamed down my face. The yacht vibrated beneath me like a beast desperate to break free. Release the autopilot, I ordered. Ethan hesitated, but Lila, panicked beyond strategy, lunged to the console and hit the switch. The autopilot beeped and disengaged. The wheel snapped under my hands, nearly spinning me off my feet. I tightened my grip. Trim the bow, I shouted. We're cutting into the waves wrong. Lila stared at me as if seeing someone she'd never met. How do you know what to do? I didn't answer. I pulled the wheel hard, forcing the bow into the storm at an angle that would keep us from capsizing. Ethan staggered toward me. Let me take it. Touch this wheel, I said, and we all die. For a split second, lightning illuminated us again. The father at the wheel, the son behind him desperate and furious. The storm screaming around us like judgment itself. Another wave struck the starboard side. The solstice tilted, listing far enough that I felt the metal beneath my boots slide. Hold on, I shouted. The yacht righted itself, slamming back down so hard that everything rattled the deck, the railings, even our bones. Ethan gasped in shock. You saved us, he said, sounding almost childlike. I didn't look at him. I've been saving you your entire life. The storm crashed around us, relentless, but the angle was right now. The wheel obeyed me. The waves still slammed, but they no longer threatened to pitch us sideways. The yacht climbed each swell, instead of being swallowed by it. "You're not incompetent," Lila whispered, realization hitting her like a physical blow. "No," I said. "I never was." "But the reports," she stammered. "The doctor forged," I said. Ethan's face twisted. "You're lying." I turned the wheel again, keeping us aligned with the rising waves. "You had access to my medical records. You bribed a board member. You staged confusion. You hired someone to write a report that never existed." Ethan's voice cracked under the weight of the storm. We were trying to protect the company." "You were trying to steal it," I corrected. Lightning flashed. This time the thunder followed instantly. The storm was nearly upon us. "We need to head back," Lila cried. "Turn us around." "Turning us broadside will flip the boat," I warned. "The storm," she began. "Isn't the thing trying to kill me?" I said. "Not tonight." Ethan's desperation grew wild and unfiltered. "Dad, we can't survive this. Help us get back to shore. Please." I finally looked at him. Not the heir I raised, not the boy who used to cling to my hand on fishing trips, but the man who plotted my death with legal templates and staged videos. "Now you want my help?" I said. He swallowed hard. "Yes." The wind roared again as another massive swell approached. I braced myself, nudging the wheel to shift our angle slightly. The solstice climbed crested and dropped with a bone-shaking crash. Then I spoke through the storm, each word carried by the wind that tore us apart and stitched us together again. "Help," I said, "is something you earn." Lightning ripped through the sky one more time, and the solstice surged forward into the heart of the storm, with me at the helm, and my killers clinging to the deck, afraid, exposed, and finally beginning to understand that they were not the only ones capable of shaping fate. The storm reached its full fury just as the coastline vanished behind a curtain of rain. Sheets of water hammered the deck, turning the teak into a slick, trembling platform that groaned under the weight of each crashing swell. I held the wheel with both hands, feeling each vibration through the metal, guiding the solstice up and over the monstrous waves. Ethan and Lila clung to the railing like passengers on a sinking ship, not predators anymore, but terrified amateurs who suddenly realized how small they were in the face of real danger. "Dad, just tell us what to do," Ethan shouted, voice cracking as the wind howled around us. "You wouldn't listen," I called back without turning. "Not until the ocean made you." Another wave rose, an obsidian wall shimmering with white foam. The bow climbed slowly, water cascading across the deck, soaking us to the bone. Lila screamed as the yacht tipped so steeply she lost her footing. But Ethan caught her before she slid into the rail. Gravity wrenched the solstice downward, slamming her into the trough with a sickening crash. The hull shuddered so violently I felt it in my teeth. "Dad, we have to turn around," Ethan yelled. "We can't," I barked. "You turn broadside in a storm like this. You roll. You want to die tonight?" That's how he looked, stunned, blinking through salt and rain. His hair stuck to his forehead. His breathing was ragged. He wasn't the picture-perfect CEO tonight. He wasn't the man in tailored suits, orchestrating inheritance theft from behind office doors. He was a frightened boy who didn't understand the ocean. "We're not going to make it," Lila whispered, voice trembling. "You weren't supposed to," I said coldly. They both stared at me, horrified. But my eyes were on the horizon, searching for the right moment, the right current, the right angle. Thunder boomed overhead, and lightning lit the deck in white-hot flashes. The yacht climbed another towering wave. Ethan lunged toward me. "Let me take the wheel." I shoved him back with my shoulder. "You don't take command of a storm you don't understand." He stumbled, grabbing the console, his fear twisted into anger. "You're doing this on purpose. You want us to die out here. I want you to see what real consequences look like, I said. I want you to feel what it's like when you're no longer in control. Lila wiped water from her eyes. This is insane. You're going to kill us. I'm trying to save us, I said. Something you both should have thought about before you planned this voyage. Lightning struck the water off our port side, the crack so loud it shook the mast. The smell of ozone filled the air. The solstice jerked sideways from the shockwave. Ethan Lila cried, "We need to do something." You did enough, I said, voice low but firm. All those fake reports, all those staged videos. You tried to erase a man before he was dead. Ethan met my gaze, rage and panic swirling in his eyes. What do you want from us? He demanded. What do you want right now? The truth, I said. We told you. No, I snapped, not the rehearsed lines. Not the lies you practiced. I want the real truth. The storm surged again, and the solstice tilted sharply. The wheel jerked in my hands. I fought it back, muscles burning. The yacht groaned as a massive wave smashed into the port side, sending Ethan and Lila crashing into the bulkhead. When they scrambled back up, the masks were finally gone. Ethan spit seawater in rage. Fine. You want the truth? You're stubborn. You won't step down. You won't retire. You want to die in your chair. Dad, what were we supposed to do? Wait for you to collapse in a meeting? You could have talked to me, I said. You could have trusted me. You never trusted me, he shot back. Not once. Not with the company, not with decisions, not with anything. You built an empire and refused to let anyone else touch it. You wanted a son who worshipped you, not one who challenged you. The words hit like cold water, not because they were true, but because he believed them. Lila chimed in, voice sharp and brittle. You made him feel small. Every accomplishment, every step he took, you reminded him you'd done it better. Do you have any idea what that does to a person I didn't raise you to kill? I said. Lightning flashed again, bathing us all in white. You didn't raise me at all, Ethan shouted. You raised your company, and I was supposed to inherit it like a museum piece. He stepped forward, eyes burning with years of resentment. You're right, I said softly. You weren't supposed to inherit the company as a museum piece. His breathing slowed. You were supposed to inherit it as a man, I added. You made yourself the opposite. Before he could answer, a monstrous swell rose behind us, higher than anything we'd seen yet. It towered above the deck like a black mountain. Hold on, I yelled. The solstice climbed the wave, trembling from the strain. Water poured over the bow, flooding the deck. Lila covered her face, screaming. Ethan grabbed the railing, knuckles white. We crested the top and dropped. The impact was catastrophic. The deck tilted, water surged, and something metal snapped near the mast. The yacht groaned like it might break in half. And then silence. Not real silence, just the eerie pocket of lull that sometimes follows a massive wave in a storm. The air went still. The wind paused, as if taking a breath. In that sliver of quiet, I heard something else. A faint beep. Coming from the lower cabin. I recognized it instantly. The distress beacon, triggered manually. Someone had activated it. Ethan's face drained of color. Lila looked sick. You didn't, I said. I thought, Ethan stammered. If the beacon goes out and the storm, and you fall overboard, you think it'll cover your tracks? I asked. It'll only place you at the scene of your father's death. He stared at me, and I saw the truth dawn across his features. They hadn't just lost control of the plan. They'd lost control of themselves. You're not walking away from this clean, I said. Thunder cracked again, and the wind roared back to life like a slammed door. We need to secure the cabin, Lila yelled, scrambling toward the stairs. If the storm gets worse, we're not going below, I said. Not until we fix what you broke. What did we break? Ethan demanded. The truth, I answered. The yacht lurched again as the next set of waves approached. There was no more need for pretending, not for them, not for me. Tonight the storm wasn't the real danger. The real danger was the man Ethan had become, and the man he didn't realize I still was. I planted my feet, steadied the wheel, and prepared for the final phase of a plan I hadn't told them about. Because unlike my son, I didn't need fake documents, forged signatures, or staged videos to win. I only needed the storm. Rain hammered the roof of the cabin like 1,000 fists when I finally forced the solstice back into a manageable heading. The storm eased only slightly enough for me to guide the yacht toward a narrow cove I'd remembered from old charts an inlet fishermen used to duck into during bad weather. Ethan and Lila stayed silent as I steered us with steady hands. They had run out of rage, run out of excuses, run out of the illusion that they were in control. When the hull scraped gently against the rocky shelf, I cut the engine and let the yacht drift into the shelter of tall cliffs that blocked the worst of the wind. We weren't safe, not entirely, but we were no longer in the jaws of the storm. I turned to face them. Below deck, I ordered, "Now." Ethan hesitated, glancing at the open sea, as if considering jumping and swimming for it. Lila grabbed his arm, not out of concern, but survival instinct. They both descended the stairs, drenched, exhausted, terrified. I followed, locking the cabin door behind us. The interior was dim, lit only by a flickering emergency bulb. Water dripped from our clothes, pooling on the teak floors. Lila shivered uncontrollably. Ethan leaned against a wall, breathing hard, his hair plastered to his skull. "What now?" he asked hoarsely. "You going to call the Coast Guard?" "Not yet," I said. His eyes widened with something like hope. But it wasn't hope. It was calculation. "Sit," I told them. They obeyed. Not because they respected me, because the storm had stripped every illusion of power from them. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the waterproof pouch I'd hidden there earlier. Inside was a small external drive, a notepad, and a pen. I set them all carefully on the table. Ethan swallowed hard. "What? What is that evidence?" I said. "Yours?" He stiffened. "We didn't. You planned my death." I cut in. "You rehearsed it. You choreographed it. You documented it. And you left a trail so sloppy it would embarrass a first-year law student." Lila bristled. "You don't know anything." I looked directly at her. "You switched the labels on my medication. You staged a call to the doctor saying I was confused. You filmed me when you thought I wasn't paying attention." She opened her mouth, then closed it. "And Ethan," I added, turning to him, "you forged my signature on a request to freeze my accounts." His face went pale. "You deleted my access to Ward Maritime. You filed draft probate paperwork while I was still alive. You created a digital trail labeling me mentally incompetent." He said nothing. "You gave me a one-way ticket today," I finished. "But the thing about one-way trips is that someone always waits at the other end. Someone who expects you to vanish." The cabin swayed gently with the tide. The storm roared outside, but in here, everything was still. Ethan finally found his voice. "What do you want from us?" "Names," I said. "All of them." "What names?" His voice cracked. "You didn't orchestrate this alone. You're smart, Ethan, but you're not a criminal mastermind. You had help." Lila sucked in a breath and looked away. "Confirmation enough. Let's start with who drafted your fake power of attorney," I pressed. No answer. "Who coached you on the dementia narrative?" Silence. "Who told you to bring me out here?" Lila's voice trembled. "We're not saying anything." "You will," I said. Because the yacht has no signal right now. The beacon you activated will send a ping, but the Coast Guard won't reach us for at least an hour. Until then, it's just us. You, me, and the truth. Ethan wiped rain from his forehead. If we tell you, will you let us live? I met his eyes with a cold, measured stare. I am not the one who threatened your lives tonight. He flinched. Good. He should. The boat rocked gently, giving the moment a strange intimacy. Eerie, even. Finally, he spoke. There's someone who told us how to do it, how to make it look legal. Name, I said. R.K. I nodded slowly. Ruth Kerrigan, Lila gasped. Ethan stiffened. He hadn't expected me to know. You've met her, he stammered. Once, I said. At a charity gala you dragged me to. She took an interest in my estate. Asked questions no stranger should ask. The memory slotted into place with painful clarity. She told us you were at risk. Ethan said, voice weak. Told us you were losing your judgment. She said if we didn't act, the board would fire me, I finished. Force a succession vote. Remove me from power. He nodded. And you believed her, I said. She showed us reports, he argued. She showed us data. Forged, I said. Fabricated, just like your paperwork. Silence stretched heavy as the storm outside. The dementia narrative I pressed. Who orchestrated that? Ruth Ethan whispered. She said if we didn't get ahead of it, someone else would. That it was better for family to control things than outsiders. Lila spoke next, voice faint. She said it would be quick, a clean transition, no suffering. I stared at them both. No suffering, I repeated softly. Except mine. The shame on their faces was real. Not enough to undo anything, but enough to show they finally understood the enormity of what they'd done. And the storm, I asked. Part of the plan, Ethan shook his head. We didn't expect it to hit early. We thought we had 3 more hours. So you planned to kill me after sunset, I said. Under calmer seas. A push, a slip, a tragic accident. Lila closed her eyes. It wasn't supposed to go like this. It never does, I said. The yacht creaked as a gust hit the cliffs. Water drummed against the hull. The storm was still out there waiting. I reached for the external drive. This, I said, holding it up, is going to the authorities. Ethan's eyes widened. No, Dad, wait. This drive contains the emails you tried to delete, the bank transfers, the medical forgeries, the will drafts, the board messages. Everything. How did you even... I've been watching, I said. Longer than you think. Their expressions contorted fear, disbelief, horror, cycling through their eyes. You think you trapped me on this boat? I said quietly. No, I trapped you. Lila's breath caught. You wanted a one-way trip, I added, but you weren't prepared for who else was tracking the solstice. What do you mean? Ethan asked. I pocketed the drive. Someone saw what you did, I said. Someone who pulled me from the water. Someone who's been on your tail for weeks. You're lying, Ethan whispered. The yacht rocked harder. A new wave slammed the inlet, sending a boom echoing through the rocky walls. Am I asked. Their silence told me everything. The storm might have calmed in here, but a far greater reckoning was coming. I stood, grabbed the emergency radio, and turned the dial. The signal crackled. Coast Guard, this is Solstice, I said, voice steady. 3 souls aboard, vessel disabled. I require immediate assistance. Ethan surged forward. Dad, please, I raised a hand, stopping him without effort. Don't call me that, I said. His face broke. I clicked the radio again. And Coast Guard, I added. Be advised, this is an attempted homicide call. Lila collapsed into the bench. Ethan stumbled back as if struck. Outside, lightning split the sky again, illuminating the cliffs in stark white. The storm wasn't done, and neither was I. The Coast Guard cutter arrived 2 hours after my call lights slicing through the thinning rain as it maneuvered into the cove. By then, the worst of the storm had passed, leaving behind a restless swell that rocked the solstice in slow, uneven breaths. Ethan and Lila sat opposite me in the cabin, pale and silent, the kind of silence that only comes when people realize their world has split open and there's no way to stitch it back together. When the rescue team boarded their boots, thudded on the teak deck above us. Voices followed, sharp, decisive, trained for crisis. But I heard no urgency in their tone, no notes of alarm, just procedure. To them, this was a standard retrieval. To me, it was an extraction from the crime scene. A Coast Guard officer stepped down into the cabin helmet, still dripping seawater. "Mr. Ward," he asked. "Yes. We're here to bring you ashore. We'll tow your vessel once the weather stabilizes." Behind him, Ethan opened his mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to spin, but the officer raised a hand. "Sir, we'll speak with you separately." He meant Ethan, not me. That was a small victory I let myself savor. I stood slowly, feeling the stiffness of adrenaline leaving my body inch by inch. I motioned toward the pouch in my hand. "This contains evidence you'll need," I said. "Emails, forged medical documents, attempted probate filings, the whole operation behind tonight." The officer nodded, but didn't reach for it. "We'll process everything once we're back on land." He didn't say which of us would walk off the boat as a witness and which as a suspect. He didn't need to. Ethan's shoulders sagged at the unspoken verdict. We climbed onto the cutter one by one. As the solstice faded behind us in the fog, I kept my eyes forward, refusing to look back at the yacht that had almost been my tomb. Whatever happened next, the water had released me. Ethan wasn't so lucky. The Coast Guard station in Newport was surprisingly quiet for a building that held the aftermath of attempted murder. A medic checked my vitals. Another officer took my formal statement. They listened carefully as I explained the forged documents, the staged videos, the crafted dementia narrative. I gave them dates, names, file numbers, financial transfers. But I didn't give them the one thing they wanted most: the external drive. That was for someone else. "Mr. Ward will be in touch soon," the senior officer said. "But currently we have insufficient grounds to detain your son or daughter-in-law." "I expected that," I replied. Storm or no storm, crimes like theirs needed more than words and one frantic night at sea. They needed proof. Something irrefutable. Something digital. Something I already had. I walked out of the station and into the cold morning light, the world washed clean by rain. Harper's text arrived just as my phone connected to the local network. "Where are you? You alive? The radar shows the solstice in a protected cove. Did you get off? Please answer." H. I exhaled a long, worn breath and typed back. "Alive. I need your help. Meet at the Kitsville cabin. 1 hour." When the car service dropped me off at the rocky lot above the cove, Harper was already pacing in front of the cabin, hair pulled into a messy bun laptop bag slung over her shoulder. She froze when she saw me. "You look like hell," she said. "I feel slightly better than I look." Benji stepped out from behind her arms, crossed face etched with worry. "When your text came in, we thought—" He shook his head. "Never mind, you're here." Inside the cabin, the small space felt warmer than I remembered. Harper cleared a spot on the table and set up her laptop. Benji handed me a towel and a mug of coffee strong enough to wake the dead. I took a long sip. "Tell us everything," Harper said. So I did. All of it. The trap, the storm, the dementia setup, the forged power of attorney, the probate drafts, the confession in the cabin, and the name that mattered most of all: Ruth Kerrigan Harper repeated, eyes narrowing. Sounds like a lawyer. She is, I confirmed. An estate transition specialist. Inheritance manipulation, she muttered. Explains the POA fraud. She opened her laptop, fingers flying across the keys. Let me pull what I can find. Within 30 seconds, she froze. Holy, okay, yeah. This woman's big. Private clients only. No public filings in the last year. 2 complaints sealed by court order. Meaning, Benji asked. Meaning she's either incredibly good or incredibly corrupt. Harper clicked open a data registry. Hold up. She's registered as senior counsel at Morrison Torres and Associates. Torres, I repeated. That's familiar. Harper nodded. Estate probate asset transition. The firm handles it all. And Jason Morrow used to work there, I added. He mentioned something about, what was it? Unethical restructuring. Restructuring my ass, Harper muttered. This is organized inheritance theft. I set the external drive beside her laptop. This contains evidence, I said. Emails between Ethan and RK, metadata on forged documents, drafts of fake medical reports. Harper's head snapped up. You have metadata on every document. She took the drive like it was made of glass. Jonathan, this isn't just a smoking gun. This is artillery. I leaned back, exhausted, but focused. We need more than a handful of files. We need corroboration, witnesses, someone who can explain Ruth Kerrigan's involvement. Jason could, Harper said. He's been watching her for months. He's the one who recognized her digital signature, I agreed. Said he'd seen her involvement in at least 6 questionable cases. Benji frowned. You think your son was just one of many? I nodded. Ruth has a pattern. Find a wealthy elder with declining family relationships, coach the heirs through a compassionate intervention. Build a case for incompetency, seize control of the estate. Harper finished the sentence. And if the elder fights back... They die suddenly, I said. Boating mishaps, accidental falls, medication mix-ups. Silence fell over the room. Harper closed the laptop. We need Jason. We will, I replied. But first we need to know how far this runs. She opened her laptop again and ran 3 cross-references, court petitions, death records, sealed incompetency filings. She let out a low whistle. Oh, God. Jonathan. You're not the only one. How many? I asked quietly. She hesitated. At least 12 names tied to this firm. All wealthy, all declared incompetent within 6 months of death. Benji spat out a curse. That's a killing machine. Harper turned the screen toward me, rows of signatures, all bearing the same initials, RK. The initials of the woman who'd tried to erase me. I sat back, stunned, but unsurprised. Ethan hadn't invented the plan. He'd stepped into a pipeline designed to swallow men like me. Jonathan, Harper said softly, this isn't just your son's betrayal. This is a criminal network. And if they realize you're alive, Benji added, they'll try again. They can try, I said. But I won't be the one caught off guard. Harper closed her laptop with a decisive snap. Then we gather everything. Jason's testimony, your digital evidence, satellite radar from the storm, Coast Guard logs, everything. And we build a case, I said. A case that will crush Ruth Kerrigan and expose Ethan and Lila before they can regroup. Benji smirked. Never thought I'd help take down a white-collar crime ring. You pulled me from the water, I said. You're part of this now. Harper glanced out the window at the calming sea. What's the plan? I breathed slowly. Phase 1, I said, is already underway. And Phase 2? She asked. I stood looking out toward the horizon, where the storm's tail still flickered with lightning. Phase 2, I said, is haunting them. Harper blinked. Haunting, I nodded. Let Ethan believe the storm swallowed me. Let Lila start to crack, and let Ruth Kerrigan panic when she realizes files she thought were safe have vanished. They think I'm dead? I finished. Good, that's how I'll win. The cabin filled with stillness again, but this time it wasn't fear, it was strategy. Purpose, a quiet promise of war. The storm outside had passed, but the one inside was just beginning. Night settled over Providence like a slow, heavy curtain as I stood in the shadow of Ward Maritime's towering headquarters. The glass building loomed above the harbor, its steel ribs gleaming under the streetlights. Same place I'd walked into every morning for 25 years. Same doors I'd opened before sunrise, the same lobby that smelled faintly of teak varnish and ambition. Tonight, though, I wasn't entering as the founder. Tonight, I entered as a ghost. Harper sat beside me in Benji's borrowed fishing truck, fingers flying across her keyboard as she tapped into the building's public network. The glow of her screen lit her determined face. "Security rotation switched 10 minutes ago," she whispered. "This is your best window until 3 a.m. After that, cleaning crews come in." "And Ethan?" I asked, eyes on the building. "He hasn't logged in since we tracked him leaving his house 2 hours ago," Harper said. "He's home, panicked. Probably tearing the place apart looking for whoever messaged him at midnight." "Good, let him sweat." "Ready?" she asked. I pulled my jacket tighter against the cold wind whipping in from the bay. "Let's finish this." I stepped out of the truck and moved toward the service door on the west side of the building, the one construction crews used back when Ward Maritime was still a mess of rebar and scaffolding. Few people knew it existed now. I hadn't forgotten. The keycard reader blinked red as I pressed a maintenance pass Harper had generated earlier. The device chirped. The light switched to green. "Still works," she whispered through my earpiece. I pushed the door open and slipped inside. The hallway was quiet, humming with the low drone of ventilation systems. Emergency lights cast a dim blue glow. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and cold metal. I walked with purpose, not fast, not slow, just steady. A man who knew every inch of this place. Because I did. I'd designed half of it myself. On the third-floor landing, Harper's voice returned in my ear. Cameras looping in sections A, D, and G. "You've got 90 seconds to cross the atrium." "Copy." The atrium stretched before me, glass ceilings, polished stone-lush indoor plants. It was beautiful in the day. At night it felt like the lobby of a museum built for ghosts. My footsteps echoed across the marble. Halfway across, I froze. A guard's flashlight cut through the dark. He wasn't supposed to be here yet. I ducked behind a large planter, pressing myself into the shadows. The guard ambled by, humming softly, tapping his baton absently against his leg. My heart thudded in my ears. He paused, turned, raised his flashlight toward me. Jonathan Harper whispered sharply, "Move now, left side stairwell, 10 feet behind you." I shifted silently, using the planter as cover. When the guard swung his beam toward the opposite wall, I darted into the stairwell and eased the door shut. Footsteps echoed behind me, fading. Close. Too close. But I wasn't turning back now. I climbed the stairs to the 12th floor executive level. My level. Where my life's work was archived, reshaped and corrupted by the son who'd believed he could erase me. When I pushed the door open, the hallway was dark. A single emergency light flickered down the corridor, casting long, thin shadows across the carpet. Harper whispered, "The biometric pad outside the CEO's suite will reject you." "I know," I said. "And Face ID, I know." "Then, how do you plan to get inside?" I smiled faintly. By remembering what Ethan forgot. I approached the frosted glass door to the CEO's office. The shiny biometric pad flashed red before I even touched it. But the older manual lock hidden beneath a panel near the floor hadn't been updated since I left. I knelt, slid the panel open, and pressed my thumb to the cold metal keyhole. A tiny click. Old school security, I whispered. Installed by me, removed by no one. The door unlocked. I slipped inside. The room was immaculate, too immaculate. No papers, no clutter, no sign of ongoing work. A showroom office, not a working one. Except for the smell. A faint chemical tang. Solvent. I crossed the room. On the far side, beneath the massive window overlooking the sleeping city, a stack of cardboard boxes sat sealed with tape labeled in black marker. Archive to storage. Confidential purge after sign-off. Purging. They were clearing everything, destroying evidence, but not quickly enough. I pulled out a small penlight and peeled open the first box. Inside lay folders, stacks of them. Medical reports with my name on them. Financial summaries, altered numbers, forged signatures. One folder caught my eye. Ward Transition Plan Phase 2, Incapacity Event, prepared by R. Sharon. Kerrigan, my stomach tightened. I turned the page. A second sheet, Phase 3. Finalization report, signed by Ethan Ward. Pending death certificate, witness statements, maritime report. I scanned the page's handover details. Instructions for the board, pre-written condolence messages for employees. Even a drafted obituary. This is it, I whispered. This is everything. Grab all of it, Harper said. We'll scan it, back it up, encrypt it. I began stuffing documents into my bag. Then I saw the safe. Heavy. Built into the wall. Hidden behind a polished art panel. Ethan had redecorated. But he hadn't moved the safe. I moved the artwork aside and activated the keypad. 4 digits. He changed nothing. I entered his childhood birthday. The safe clicked open. Inside lay a hard drive, a leather-bound notebook, and a manila envelope stamped Confidential R. Kerrigan. Master Files, Estate Realignment, Neptune Case. I reached for the envelope just as a faint sound echoed down the hallway. Footsteps. Fast. Jonathan, get out, Harper hissed. Someone's coming up the north elevator. How many? 1. Not good, not terrible either. I grabbed the envelope and slipped the notebook into my coat. Closed the safe. Shifted the artwork back into place. Then the lights flickered. Power draw, I whispered. No, Harper said, tapping keys furiously. Someone's logging in remotely. Someone high level. Ethan, no. My pulse spiked. Then who? The elevator dinged. Footsteps approached. I ducked behind the desk, waiting breath shallow. The door handle clicked. The door opened. A figure stepped inside. He walked with measured pace, light, precise steps. A tall man in a charcoal coat. Dark hair, sharp features. Carrying a briefcase. Not Ethan. Not Lila. And not someone I'd ever seen before. He looked around the room with familiarity, like a man checking in on something he already owned. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but deliberate. Ruth, he said into his phone, the files are still here. No disturbance on the cameras. I told you Ward Maritime is under control. Phase 3 will proceed on schedule. My blood ran cold. Not just a hired consultant, not just a lawyer, a partner, a handler, a man who sounded like he had cleaned up messes before. Phase 3, he repeated softly. Yes, even if the old man survived the storm. He paused, listening. Then he smiled. I'll take care of it. A chill ripped down my spine. He wasn't talking about Ethan. He wasn't talking about Lila. He was talking about me. He turned toward the desk. I held my breath, muscles tense. He took 3 slow steps, then stopped. A beep echoed from his phone. Hold on, he muttered. Reading a message, a distraction, my only chance. I slipped out from behind the desk, moving silently, keeping low. His back was turned. He didn't see me. I reached the door, eased it open, and stepped into the hallway. Jonathan Harper breathed, "Go now." Down the east stairs. "I'm killing the hallway cameras for 60 seconds. Move." I sprinted. The briefcase man turned too late, shouting something behind me. I flew down the stairwell 2 steps at a time. Floor 1085. By the time I reached the service exit, I could hear distant footsteps pounding above. I burst through the door into the cold night, racing to the harbor where Benji's truck waited. He flung the passenger door open. "Get in!" I jumped inside. The truck peeled away from the curb just as the building lights flared bright behind us. In my lap sat the envelope marked Neptune Case. Inside that envelope was the truth. Not just about Ethan, not just about Ruth, but about a conspiracy larger, older, and far more dangerous than I had imagined. And for the first time since the yacht, the storm inside me truly began to rise. Benji drove with both hands clenched tight on the wheel, eyes flicking between the road and the mirror. Harper sat in the back beside me, her laptop open, and casting a cold blue glow across her determined face. Rain smeared the windshield, turning Providence into streaks of light and shadow as we sped away from Ward Maritime headquarters. "You're sure he didn't see your face?" Harper asked, barely above a whisper. "He saw movement," I said. "Not me." "Movement is enough," Benji muttered. "Guys like that don't need details. They need targets." I didn't argue. The leather envelope rested on my lap like its own heartbeat. Neptune Case. Whatever was inside would either save me or bury us all deeper. The truck hit a sharp turn, tires hissing on wet asphalt. Harper braced herself against the seat. "We'll stop up ahead," she said. "I need a stable signal before I open the files." "No," I said, gripping the envelope tighter. "We go somewhere safer." "Where's safer than a moving car?" Benji asked. "Somewhere no one expects me to go," I said. "Not home, not the cabin, not the office." Harper leaned forward. "Where then?" "The one place the network can't reach," I said. "My wife's old studio." They exchanged a look, half concerned, half curious, but they didn't question me. Martha Ward's art studio sat tucked behind an abandoned textile mill on the edge of Pawtucket. She'd kept it long before I founded Ward Maritime, long before our marriage frayed under the weight of success, loss, and grief. She used to say the place had no ghosts because it was too small for them. Tonight I hoped she was right. Benji parked behind the building, hidden from the street. The rain had eased into a cold drizzle, tapping lightly against the metal siding. The studio's back door stuck the way it always had, and I pushed it open with my shoulder. The lights flickered on after a hesitant hum. It looked exactly as she'd left it. The easel, the jars of brushes, the unfinished canvas she never completed, the faint scent of lavender. Harper shut the blinds while Benji checked each corner. I sat at the old wooden table, laid the Neptune envelope before me, and took a long breath. "Let's see what we're dealing with," Harper said, pulling up a chair. I opened the envelope. Inside was a stack of documents, each stamped with a blue seal. I recognized immediately confidential estate transition forms, drafted protocols, identity briefs. But what stopped my breath was the first page. Estate realignment, high-value targets. Codename Neptune, prepared by R. Kerrigan and Associates. Updated 4 months ago, a list of 12 names followed. All elderly, all wealthy, all based in New England, and all marked with a status indicator, cleared pending in process. Half were checked off, half were still in play. The 8th name on the list, Jonathan Ward, had a bright red slash through it. "Jesus," Harper whispered. "This isn't just a network. This is a pipeline." Benji took a step closer. They run this like a business. It is a business, I said. Murder for profit disguised as elder care. Harper flipped through the pages. These aren't just estate documents. These are psychological profiles, health reports, risk assessments. And this, she said, pulling one page free is a projected timeline for your Bremer-Sassourer transition. Step by step. The timeline detailed everything Ethan and Lila had done. The staged confusion at meetings, the false medical evaluations, the manipulated board communications, and finally, maritime fatality event scheduled. Harper pressed her lips together, fury simmering behind her eyes. This wasn't your son's idea, she said softly. He was groomed for it. No, I said. He made choices. Ruth didn't push him off that cliff, he jumped. She didn't argue. Benji picked up another sheet. Look at this. It was a financial ledger. Money flowing from offshore accounts into shell corporations. Then into trusts. Then finally into private holdings, under a name I didn't recognize. Calvin Merrow, Director of Strategic Acquisitions. My chest tightened. Harper's brows knit together. That's him? The man in the office. I leaned back, mind racing. Merrow isn't just a lawyer, I said. He's the architect. Ruth handles the legal cover. Merrow runs the operation. And Ethan was their opening, Harper added. Their way into Ward Maritime. Benji slammed the paper down. So they come after you, get the company, drain it dry, and disappear. Harper shook her head. Not disappear. Reinvent. Move to the next target. They won't get that chance, I said. The studio felt colder suddenly. The overhead lights buzzed. Outside, a gust of wind rattled the metal siding. Then Harper's laptop pinged softly. She frowned. That's strange. What I asked, I just got an alert. Someone is trying to remotely access Ward Maritime's internal servers. Not background access active override, Merrow Benji asked. Has to be, she said. He's trying to wipe evidence before Ethan notices. She tapped furiously at the keys, muttering to herself. Are you blocking him? I asked. I'm trying, she said. But this guy, he's not normal IT level. He's FBI level, NSA level. He's burying trails as he goes. She paused. No, he's not wiping. He's rewriting. Rewriting what I demanded. Your death report. I felt the blood leave my face. He's inputting a Coast Guard fatality timestamp, she said, eyes widening. Right now, at this moment, as if your body was found. Benji swore under his breath. They're trying to close the file before you can blow the whistle. And claiming you're dead, Harper finished, gives them control over Ward Maritime. I stood, adrenaline flooding my limbs. We need to stop him. Harper looked up. Jonathan, he's inside the system. That means he's near a terminal. Meaning he's close enough to strike. The metal siding outside creaked again. But this time, it wasn't the wind. Benji pulled back the curtain a half-inch. His entire body went rigid. What do you see? I asked. Benji swallowed. A black sedan, no plates. Harper closed her laptop instantly. Jonathan, she whispered. They found the truck. A faint footstep sounded outside. Then another. Slow. Deliberate. Like someone testing the perimeter. My pulse pounded against my ribs. I knew who it was. Calvin Merrow. The man who had casually scheduled my death like a board meeting. A shadow moved past the frosted glass window on the door. Harper stiffened. Benji's hand drifted toward the wrench he kept under his jacket. I stood in the middle of Martha's old studio, surrounded by her unfinished art, the smell of oil paint lingering in the air. And for the first time since the yacht storm, fear settled deep into my bones, not because I was outmatched, but because this man wasn't operating on greed. He was operating on certainty. Certainty that I should be dead by now. Certainty that loose ends needed cutting. The door handle turned. Once. Twice. Then a cold, calm voice came through the crack. "Mr. Ward," Merrow said softly, "I believe you have something that belongs to me." The doorknob turned with a slow, deliberate click, the kind that told me the man on the other side wasn't rushing or panicking. Calvin Merrow wasn't the type to rush. He wasn't the type to knock either. He was the type who assumed doors opened for him, or that he'd open them himself one way or another. "Mr. Ward," he repeated through the cracked voice, smooth and steady. "Let's not make this theatrical. You have something of mine. I'd like it back." Harper shot me a look that said, "Don't answer. Don't move. Don't even breathe." Benji tightened his grip on the wrench he kept tucked under his coat, the metal glinting faintly under the studio's dim light. The door handle turned again. Jonathan Harper whispered, "Back room, now." But I didn't move toward the back room. Instead, I reached for the small switch Martha had installed beneath the old supply shelf, the studio's panic latch. A simple device. No electricity, no alarms. Just a mechanical bolt that could turn the steel-reinforced door into a bank vault door. I flicked it. The bolt slammed into place. Merrow paused. Then he chuckled softly. "Clever. But you can't stay in there forever." "We only need an hour," Harper murmured under her breath as she cracked her laptop back open. "Give me 60 minutes, and I can broadcast the Neptune files to every federal inbox south of Maine." 50 minutes. Benji corrected, peeking through the narrow gap in the blinds. "He's got a partner. Right side of the building." "Moving slow?" Armed, Harper asked. Benji nodded. "Absolutely armed." Another voice joined Merrow's outside, deeper with a slight drawl. "This the place?" "Yes," Merrow said. "Keep your eyes open. Ward has 2 companions. The woman is the threat. She'll be on a laptop." Harper flinched. "And the fisherman?" the second man asked. "Dispose of him first," Merrow said casually. "He's expendable." My jaw tightened. Benji didn't blink. He only shifted his stance, loosening his shoulders like he was warming up for a fight. The rain had stopped entirely now. No storm, no wind. Just the low hum of the highway in the distance and 2 killers standing outside the last place Martha ever painted. Harper typed furiously, her fingers flying across the keys. "Jonathan. I'm in their system. Merrow's number Ward Maritimes." She swallowed. "And he's in it too. Right now. I can see his cursor." "Can you block him out?" I asked. "I can slow him down. But he's rewriting everything. What's he changing?" She turned the laptop so I could see. "A death certificate. Mine. Finalized. Time-stamped. Filed. Certified. He's pushing it through probate," Harper said. "Once it's signed off, Ethan legally inherits everything." "And that's when the money starts moving," Benji added. "And once the money moves," Harper said, "Merrow and his little empire sweep in and drain the estate dry." My heart beat steadily, strongly. Not with fear, no. With something colder. Resolve. Merrow knocked politely on the door. "Mr. Ward," he said, "this is unnecessary. I admire your tenacity. Truly. But you're delaying the inevitable. Open the door. Go to hell," Benji called out. Benji, Harper hissed. But Merrow only chuckled again. Bold. Fishermen usually aren't. Benji lifted the wrench. "This one is." The lock rattled as Merrow tested it again. "Jonathan," he said, "Ward Maritime is signing their morning contracts in 6 hours. The board meeting begins at 8. Your son will take your seat whether you're alive or dead." "He'll have to fight me for it," I said loudly. "Oh, he won't fight you," Merrow replied. "He'll bury you. That's what this is about, isn't it? A son finally taking his father's place. A shadow passed the frosted window. Then the other man's silhouette joined it. They were positioning themselves, flanking the windows, preparing to breach. Harper whispered, "They're going to try the side entrance." "Let them," Benji said, stepping toward the wall cabinet. "Benji, what are you doing?" "Fishing gear," he said simply. "Sharp hooks, strong lines, heavy weights, hardware." He slid open the cabinet and began grabbing gear, laying it out on the table like a makeshift toolkit for chaos. Harper blinked. "You're going to fight them with fishing equipment?" Benji grinned. "Lady, I once pulled a 200-pound tuna out of a capsized boat with nothing but a broken gaff and swear words. These clowns? No problem." I almost smiled, almost. But then Merrow's voice came again, sharper now. "Last chance, Ward. Open the door." I held up a hand, signaling silence. Then I stepped closer to the door and spoke clearly. "No." A beat of silence. Then, "Fine." A loud metallic thunk echoed through the studio as something heavy slammed against the metal siding on the right side of the building. Harper's eyes widened. "They've got a breaching ram." Benji cursed under his breath. "Not good." "Harper," I said, "upload the Neptune files now. I'm trying." "But..." She slammed her fist lightly against the table. "Merrow's fighting me. He's blocking every upload attempt." The building shook as the ram hit again, harder this time. Dust fell from the ceiling. Martha's paint jars rattled in their wooden rack. "We're running out of time," Benji said, slipping a lead weight into a length of reinforced line. "I know," Harper said through gritted teeth. "Jonathan, I need a distraction. Something big enough to break his focus." I scanned the room. My eyes landed on the fuse box. "Harper," I said, "if the power drops, what happens to the building's wireless interference field?" "It resets," she said slowly. 5 seconds of reboot time. Then it goes live again. And for those 5 seconds, we'd have an open lane, enough to push everything through. "Good. But Jonathan, the lights?" "Yes," I said. "We'll be in the dark." Another hit shook the metal wall. The siding buckled visibly. "Anything else we can use?" Harper whispered. My gaze drifted to the shelves. Paint thinner, turpentine, oil rags, flammable, all of it. I turned to Benji. "How do you feel about smoke?" He grinned. "I love smoke." I pointed to the rags. "Make it quick." He tore open a tin of solvent, dousing the rags and placing them near the vent on the far wall. Harper's eyes went huge. "Benji, we're not burning Martha's studio. We're smoking them out," he said. "Not burning the place down." I reached for the fuse switch. "Harper," I said softly, "get ready." She slid her hands into position over her keyboard. "Ready?" "Benji." He pulled out his lighter. "Ready." Merrow slammed the wall again. The metal squealed. I flipped the switch. The studio plunged into darkness. Instantly, Benji lit the solvent-drenched rags and shoved the vent open. Smoke poured outward into the night like a ghost stretching its arms. Harper's voice filled the dark. "Go, go, go." Uploading. Footsteps thudded outside. Coughing, shouting. "They're backing off," Benji whispered. "Smoke's hitting them hard." Harper kept typing. Files pushing 20%, 40, 60. The building creaked. The vent rattled. 859093 Harper, I hissed. "Please 100. The laptop chimed. The file was sent to the DOJ, to the IRS Crimes Division, to the FCC Fraud Task Force, to every federal recipient on Harper's panic list. The lights flickered as the system rebooted. Benji stomped out the rags as the smoke cleared. Harper closed her laptop, breath shaking. "It's done," she whispered. "They can't undo it now." A deadly silence followed. Then Merrow's voice came low and dangerous through the clearing smoke. "Jonathan Ward," he said, "you have just declared war." I stepped toward the door, hand steady. "I know." And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready. The sun was rising over Providence when we finally retreated from Martha's studio, slipping through the industrial maze of back streets before Merrow and his partner regrouped. The sky was pale lavender, the kind that promised calm after chaos. But inside the cabin of Benji's truck, the three of us sat in heavy silence, each of us understanding what the upload meant. There was no going back. By the time Benji pulled onto the highway, Harper's phone began vibrating non-stop. She glanced at the screen, eyes narrowing. "Federal servers are pinging," she said quietly. "Multiple agencies accessed the Neptune files within minutes of receiving them." "Good," I said, not entirely. She turned the screen toward me. "Look at this." A flurry of messages appeared, automated responses from the FBI, IRS, SEC, OIG, and 3 departments I didn't even recognize. The files had triggered several emergency flags: fraud, forgery, racketeering, elder exploitation, organized criminal activity. "They know something big is happening," Harper said. "But they don't know who the players are yet." "They will soon," I replied. But Harper didn't look relieved. "Jonathan, this isn't just a prosecution. This is a hornet's nest. You've exposed a criminal enterprise across multiple states. The feds aren't going to walk into this nicely. They're going to tear the entire network apart." "And what exactly is the problem?" Benji asked. Harper hesitated. "The problem is that people like Merrow react before they fall. And violently." I leaned back in my seat. "Then we get ahead of him." We reached the outskirts of Newport, just as the first wave hit the news. Harper played the live stream on her phone. A local reporter stood outside Ward Maritime headquarters, wind-whipping her hair. This morning, federal agencies launched an unexpected audit into Ward Maritime, following anonymous reports of financial irregularities and questionable estate practices. I felt my jaw clench. Anonymous reports meant the feds were investigating quietly for now, but officially. The reporter continued. "Sources say the inquiry appears to focus on the company's recent leadership shift, including documents filed regarding the presumed death of Jonathan Ward, files which federal analysts believe may have been altered." "So they already doubt your death," Benji said. "No," I corrected. "They doubt the paperwork, not the outcome." A notification buzzed on Harper's screen. She read it, froze. "Oh no." "What? It's Ethan. What about him?" Benji asked. She held up the phone. "Ethan Ward, statement to the press. 8:15 a.m. My team and I are cooperating fully. My father struggled with memory decline over the past year. His tragic accident at sea was a devastating loss." My chest tightened. Harper's voice wavered. "He's doubling down." "Of course he is," I said quietly. "He doesn't know I'm alive. All he sees is the storm the feds kicked up." She kept reading. "I intend to uphold his legacy and protect Ward Maritime from malicious claims." "Malicious?" Benji scoffed. "He says that while planning your murder." But Harper was staring at me with something like fear. "Jonathan," she whispered. "Listen to the rest." She scrolled. "We believe someone is impersonating my father. We have reason to fear this individual may be connected to a known criminal organization and is attempting to sabotage our family." Benji slammed his fist on the dashboard. "He's framing you as a criminal," Harper whispered. "He's smart. He's flipping the narrative. He's saying you're dangerous and unstable. If the feds think you're violent, I'll be treated as a threat," I finished. My son wasn't just covering his tracks. He was hunting me. We reached the Kitsville cabin just after 9. The house was quiet, the forest still damp from last night's rain. Benji parked behind a cluster of pines where the truck would be mostly hidden. Inside, Harper set up immediately. 2 laptops, encrypted drives, secure channels. I stepped to the window, overlooking the woods. "We need Jason." "I texted him," Harper said. "No response yet." "That's not good," Benji muttered. "No," I said. "It's very bad." Jason Morrow was the only person besides Harper who understood the digital threads behind Morrow's operations. If he was silent, something had happened. Harper's computer chimed. She checked the screen. "Oh, God." "What now?" Benji asked. Harper turned the laptop so we could see. "It's Ethan again." A new live press conference was streaming this time from the steps of the Rhode Island courthouse. My son stood at the podium, perfectly groomed, perfectly rehearsed, beside Ruth Kerrigan. Ruth looked calm, polished, poised, as if she hadn't orchestrated half a dozen deaths. "This morning," Ethan began, "I received credible information that someone resembling my deceased father attempted to break into Ward Maritime. This individual may be armed, unstable, and associating with dangerous criminals." My stomach turned. He wasn't just lying, he was feeding Morrow the legal cover he needed. "He's considered a threat to our company, our employees, and our family." Ethan continued. "If you see him, contact authorities immediately." Then Ruth stepped forward. "We are cooperating with law enforcement," she said smoothly. "We urge the public to remain calm. These are the actions of a deeply troubled man." Harper whispered, "She's painting you as delusional." Benji's jaw tightened. "If they convince the feds you're mentally unstable, they can justify killing you." "No," I said. "Morrow will do that on his own." I stared at the screen at Ethan's face. My son, my only child. The boy I'd taught to fish, to sail, to build things with his hands. Now calling me a danger, a ghost, a threat worth killing. Harper closed the laptop. "Jonathan, we need to move now. If Morrow finds this cabin, he won't. How do you know? Because he's still cleaning up the Ward Maritime mess. He has to ensure Ethan remains useful." Harper nodded reluctantly. "Then we use the remaining window wisely." "What's next?" I took a long breath. "The Neptune files expose the crimes," I said. "But exposing isn't enough. We have to dismantle the network Harper finished." "No," I said quietly. "We have to split it from the inside." Benji frowned. Meaning Ethan has to turn on them." Harper blinked. "Jonathan, after everything he did, he's in over his head. And Morrow will kill him the moment he's no longer needed." "But Ethan doesn't know that," Benji said. "He will," I replied. "And who's going to tell him?" Harper asked. "I will." Benji turned. "You want to walk into the lion's den?" "No," I said, stepping away from the window. "I want the lion to walk into mine." Harper swallowed hard. "Jonathan, what are you planning?" "Ruth and Morrow think I'm dead," I said. "Ethan thinks I'm a ghost. The feds think I'm missing." I picked up the burner phone Harper had given me earlier. "They're about to find out I'm neither." "What are you going to do?" she whispered. I typed a single sentence, then hit send. The message went to Ethan. "Meet me alone. You have one chance to live." Benji exhaled. "Jesus." Harper stared at me, where I looked out at the forest, the cabin, the river trail Martha used to walk. "Where no one can hear us," I said. "And where my son will realize," I added softly, "that the man he tried to kill isn't done talking." Ethan arrived at the ravine just after sunset alone, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his tailored coat. The narrow trail cutting through the woods was almost dark, lit only by the last scraps of fading daylight, bleeding between the tree branches. I stood at the clearing's edge, half hidden by the shadows of the pines, watching my son scan the area with quick, nervous movements. He wasn't the confident executive from the press conference. He wasn't the man who'd tried to push me into the ocean. He was a boy who'd finally realized the monsters he'd partnered with were bigger than the ones he'd tried to create. When he saw me, he stopped breathing for a second. "Dad," he whispered, eyes wide. "You're actually alive." I stepped out of the shadows. "Yes, Ethan. I'm very much alive." He flinched at my tone. For the first time in months, maybe years, he looked young, vulnerable, human. "You said you'd come alone," I said. "I did." He lifted his hands to show they were empty. "No phone, no weapons. You said this was my chance." "It is." He swallowed hard. "Dad, I never wanted—" "Don't lie," I interrupted. "Not tonight." He closed his mouth. The woods were quiet around us. No wind, no birds, no rustling leaves. Only the faint drip of water from the last rainstorm tapping on the rocks. "Ethan," I said, "do you know who Calvin Merrow truly is?" He hesitated. "He works with Ruth. He helps with succession cases." "Succession." I stepped closer. "Is that what you think I was?" "A succession case?" He looked down. "Merrow isn't a lawyer." I continued. "He's an asset reallocation strategist. That's what he calls himself. It means he transitions the wealth of elderly people to new hands, hands willing to do whatever he demands." "I didn't know," Ethan whispered. "You knew enough," I said. "You knew people died around him. You knew Ruth encouraged heirs to move quickly. You knew half her clients never survived the year." I thought he choked. I thought they were helping us. "They weren't helping you," I said. "They were using you." A tremor ran through him. He stared at the ground, shoulders shaking. She said you were slipping. She said you refused to retire. That you'd take the company down with you before you let anyone else lead. And you believed her." His silence said everything. The woods held that silence like an accusation. "She told us we needed to act fast," Ethan whispered. "Before the board removed you. Before the company fell apart." "And when did that turn into murder?" I asked. He winced like I'd hit him. "It wasn't supposed to be murder. We were supposed to stage confusion. A fall. Something plausible, like pushing me off a yacht in the middle of a storm." His breath caught. The storm wasn't supposed to hit early. And if it hadn't? His face twisted. Guilt, shame, denial, all of it bleeding together. "I don't know," he whispered. "Maybe we would have stopped." "No," I said softly, "you wouldn't have." He looked up then, eyes red-rimmed with panic. "Dad, they're going to kill me." Ruth Merrow, they kept calling all day, asking for updates, demanding access to the accounts. When I couldn't give it, when I told them I was still working on it, they got angry. "Of course they did," I said. "Their perfect plan fell apart." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Dad, I don't want to die." "Then you need to make a choice." He looked at me desperately. "Anything. I'll do anything. You can tell investigators everything I said. Every forged signature. Every message from Ruth. Every meeting with Merrow. But you can testify I pressed. You can cooperate. You can give law enforcement the inside map." His voice cracked. "And if I do, will you forgive me?" I didn't answer right away. Instead, I stepped closer, close enough to see the freckles on his cheekbones, the scar above his eyebrow from when he fell off his bike at age 7, and I carried him 3 blocks to the ER. "You didn't become this overnight," I said. "You let people whisper in your ear. You let ambition grow teeth. You let fear tell you killing your father was easier than disappointing him." He was crying now, shoulders trembling, breaths ragged. But you're still my son, I added quietly. He looked up sharply, hope flashing. That doesn't erase what you did, I said. It doesn't undo it. It doesn't make it okay. But if you choose the truth now, then you choose life. Yours, others. Maybe even if we're lucky, your own soul. He nodded, tears running freely. I'll tell them everything. Good. A twig snapped behind us. Ethan stiffened. I reached slowly into my coat, not for a weapon, but for my burner phone. I held it up. Stay calm, I whispered. They're here. He looked around wildly. Ruth Marrow. No, I said. Someone better. Footsteps approached. Heavy, crisp, disciplined. From between two pines emerged two federal agents in dark jackets marked FBI. Agent Morales and Agent Renner. I'd met them 2 hours earlier. Mr. Ward, Morales said, nodding. You brought him. I said I would. Ethan stumbled back. Dad, you set me up? No, I said. I set them up. And this is the only way to stop them. Morales stepped forward. Ethan Ward, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted homicide, and obstruction in an ongoing federal investigation. Ethan looked at me, betrayal, relief, fear all clashing in his eyes. Dad, you'll live, I said quietly. That's more than they planned for you. As they cuffed him, Ethan didn't resist. He didn't scream, he didn't deny. He just kept staring at me like he finally saw the line between us, and how close he'd come to crossing it forever. When they led him away, Agent Renner paused beside me. Marrow and Kerrigan, he asked. You'll find them at Ward Maritime by morning, I said. They'll try to run. They won't get far. He nodded and followed the others down the path. When their footsteps faded, the woods fell quiet again. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe. Not in victory, not in triumph, but in tired, heavy relief. The storm was finally over. 3 months later, the courtroom was packed. Ruth Kerrigan stood trial first. Then Calvin Marrow, charged with racketeering, fraud, organized exploitation, and 4 counts of homicide. Ward Maritime was placed under protective restructuring. Ethan cooperated fully, his testimony dismantling the network piece by piece. Lila testified too shaking, but truthful. Neither walked free, but they lived. And that mattered more than I expected. Ward Maritime returned to me by legal order, stripped of corruption, protected under federal oversight. I signed half my shares into a foundation supporting elder financial protection. As for me, I chose peace. I chose the studio. I refurbished Martha's space, added a new canvas beside hers. Some days I painted. Some days I just sat with the quiet. Sometimes quiet is a luxury earned. And one bright morning, as sunlight spilled across her old easel, I realized something. A one-way trip doesn't end where someone else intends. It ends where you choose to stand again. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in my shoes and whether you believe people can truly come back from their darkest mistakes. Like and subscribe if you want more stories like this. Your voice, just like mine, always matters.